Hey there, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia Season 8 episode review. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, episode 10, The Girl Who Loves Smiles, which serves as the big penultimate episode before the finale next week. I'm not ready for this show to be over and done with, to tell you the truth. I mean, for so many years it's been a massive comfort show for me, and now it's just going to be gone with no fresh storylines or arcs. Yeah, you can rewatch what's already there, but it's not quite the same, is it? Maybe one day Horikoshi will make a sequel or greenlight somebody to make one with his oversight like he did with Vigilantes, but I'm not confident. That being said, we still have more seasons of Vigilantes to come as well, but it's still not the same vibe, is it? I do think the mainline show is just on a whole different level. Last week's episode was heavily focused on wrapping up storylines and introducing what's happening in the aftermath, and I'll be honest, it wasn't my favourite. So hopefully this episode gives me a little bit more to go off of. Nothing else for it though, but to jump right into things. Okay, so we start off with the cold open, just once again wrapping up a couple of character storylines for some of the minor heroes. Gentle and Labrava are being pardoned for their crimes for their role in the final battle against All For One, and they have a really sweet and beautiful embrace. It's crazy how they've been able to make us care so much about these relatively minor comedy villains who anchored one of the most low-stakes arcs in the history of the show, but here we are. I do wonder whether he's going to somehow become a hero out of all of this, or is it more likely they're just going to go off together and start to live a normal life? Either way, they've had a great little arc, and I think that's a triumph for the storytelling. At the same time as all of this, whilst Gentle's free, Lady Nagant's back in prison, and she tells Hawks it's by her own choice. She is seemingly allowed to leave whenever she wants to, but she's choosing to remain because she's scared of the outside world and somebody trying to use her again. She claims that Deku showed the world a different path with his actions, but she needs to wait and see whether it actually causes any proper societal change before she's willing to go out into the world again. To me, this actually makes a whole lot of sense because, yeah, it was pretty clear that society was rotten to the core. That was the whole message of the show and the existence of the League of Villains, that the corrupted society created the perfect conditions for these type of people to be created, and thus things needed to change. Therefore, how could you not be massively skeptical in the face of this change? If even with All Might as the guiding light, that sort of thing was able to happen. We get the intro theme, and when we return, it's to watching a documentary / special feature on the news talking about Shigaraki, using clips of various different people on the street talking about their own opinions and thoughts on the man himself and what happened. This in turn serves as a little bit of an introduction to Deku's conversation with Spinner. At the same time, we also get a little bit of a reality check in regards to the cleanup effort that's being undertaken. Whilst the previous episode was very much optimistic and talked about how with all these heroes and volunteers working together, Japan was going to get back on its feet, this episode throws a little bit of a bucket of cold water realism over that. It goes out of its way in this section to really showcase there are huge regions of urban sprawl that are smashed up with nobody in sight to come and fix it, and simply not enough volunteers to be able to fix it all at once. I actually really liked this part. It felt very realistic. And then this of course leads into that conversation with Spinner, as I said. We see that despite him seeming ruined by All For One giving him multiple other quirks, that Spinner's actually able to somehow function normally. The doctor claims that he was early on in the process of turning into a Nomu, as his body was unable to completely handle all of these quirks at once, but since they had time to research the process a bit more, and since he was early in that process, they've been able to reverse course and stop his complete transformation. I do have to wonder how that even works though, because I thought that All For One and the doctor made the Nomu themselves actively, right down to the exposed brain and the beaks and everything. With Spinner, he simply got given a bunch of quirks that strained his body and brain, so I thought it would be more of a case of the fourth user of One For All, where he eventually just dies from too many quirks. Maybe this was something that was done off screen? I don't know, it just seems weird to me. Also, the absolute cheek of this man to come in and call Deku a murderer right off the bat. I mean, I get that he was friends with Shigaraki, but still, in no way does killing a mass murderer who is in the midst of more mass murdering make you, a legally recognized law enforcement official, a murderer. Not in a legal sense, and I would argue not in a moral sense as well, because like it or not, the dude was 100% asking for it and was not going to stop. So yeah, I get he'd have emotions surrounding all of this and to be salty that he lost in the end, but come on now. Spitting out murderer like it's an insult, it's kind of cringy. It does annoy me that Deku just sits there and takes it from this guy, but yeah, it also fits in with his character at the same time. Then Spinner grows big and grabs Deku, which really should have led to an immediate response from just anybody in the hospital. If he can just do this at will, surely they would have some sort of shocker collar or something, a tranquilizer dart, something to stop him from mauling the savior of Japan. Shit, they didn't even have guards outside waiting to burst in case of trouble. So yeah, I feel that the episode tries to get you to sympathize with Spinner here as he cries about how Shigaraki was his first and only friend, that they love video games, and how he was his hope after being a shut-in. But for me, Spinner comes across as the least sympathetic of the League by far. Well, him and Mr. Compress, but Compress left the story seasons and seasons ago by this point in the hospital/mountain villa battle. Spinner's whole story is about being a shut-in and feeling rejected by society for being a heteromorph, which then makes him think that he should be allowed to destroy society and kill people to bring about the change he wants to see. A lot of the other members of the League, including Shigaraki, had some really horrific backstories, but I don't know. I just can't quite get behind Spinner in that same way and have the same level of connection or sympathy for him, and so it sort of fell flat. Yeah, it's sad that he misses his friend and Sweetie wants to make a book about his life and goals so his story won't be forgotten. I just think this dude kind of sucks and I can't find it in me to care about his troubles and his woe is me mentality in the scene, which I think the episode's trying to skew you into doing. Deku's a much better person than me, I guess. He goes out of his way to try to comfort Spinner with the knowledge that Shigaraki truly cared about the League and about Spinner as a person/friend. I honestly think that's more than he deserves. Deku then goes to see All Might and the detective, and this springboards us into a really satisfying scene with Overhaul meeting the old Yakuza boss who's woken up from his coma thanks to newly created support items. Overhaul keeps begging for forgiveness, and yet there's none to be had from this old guy who just craps on him, and in a funny inversion of Endeavor and Darby, promises he's going to come back every day, not to talk and try to reconcile, but to take a shit on him every chance he can for what he did to his granddaughter. This is some very well-deserved justice, as next to All For One and Garaki, this guy's got to be the most terrible, awful, evil character in the entire show. The fact that he gets no forgiveness or redemption or anything close to that, coupled with no sob story to try to make you feel bad for him, makes me very, very happy. Absolutely screw this guy, and it seems even funnier that Deku set it up like this. Deku is famously able to see the good in so many different people, and yet for Overhaul, he's wanting him to remember what he did forever and keep suffering. You love to see it. It's then back to school where a new batch of first-year hero students are starting their time at UA, and it seems that for these kids, the new big thing is Class 1A, showing that the big names like Todoroki, Bakugo, and Deku are kind of like the All Might of their time, thanks to their exploits during the course of the final battle, and also the big events across the year like the sports festival. I just think it was a really fun full circle moment, and it's especially funny in regards to the fact that it involves two characters who are probably the least socially equipped to deal with this sort of fame and fandom. I also really enjoyed that we got to see how far Bakugo's come as a character across the course of the show in this scene. For example, when he first met Ida, he was massively rude to him and scoffed at him for his buy the book, don't break the rules mentality. And now, he's hiding behind him, snitching on them for running in the hallways. It's just fun to see how they've all become more comfortable with one another and how Bakugo clearly sees them as friends to some degree, or at least is closer with the class these days. It was the same vibe as when he was just smiling smugly at Mineta, who's crying blood at the fact that girls are paying attention to Bakugo since he's such a delinquent, and in Mineta's eyes, he doesn't deserve that kind of attention. We briefly have a scene with Aizawa and Present Mike where Aizawa turns down an interview opportunity for his class because he knows that some of them wouldn't feel comfortable in that setting, which I thought was very cute. I love the evolution of Aizawa's bond with the class over the course of the season, and how you see it grow from tough love and distance to genuine care and affection masked by a rough exterior. Then it's over to a work site where the class is helping to clean things up so the rebuilding process can begin. We have a few little wholesome scenes like Bakugo talking to Edshot and Best Jeanist and just being straight up friendly and caring, whilst also getting to see the impact of the class's heroism and how that's inspired not just those students from earlier, but has also inspired a lot of civilians to step up and do their best to try to fix Japan, whether that's through helping to clear rubble and rebuild, or simply making food for the people like we're seeing here. It's a really sweet and heartwarming sequence really, which then moves into yet another heartwarming sequence. Over the course of the last 2 or so episodes, Uraraka's been rather distant and closed off. She isn't really engaging with the other members of the class or with Deku or Sue, who normally she's always talking to. When somebody notices, she sort of just changes the subject and tries to move on to something else. She then sends a text to Sue telling her that she's going home for the time being instead of staying at the dorms with the rest of the class. Instead of going home though, she's gone to the Overlook where she talked with Deku about how they both wanted to be able to save Toga and Shigaraki, and she thinks that she failed. Because she was stabbed and bleeding out, it meant the only way for Toga to save her was to give her a blood transfusion, which in turn killed Toga. So she has a private little breakdown because ultimately, she cared, which is sweet, although I will say it's very sad that she's blaming herself for being stabbed, which led to Toga's death, even though Toga was the same person who stabbed her to begin with. I did like it because it's not like trauma and self-blame rely on logic or anything, I just found it very sad overall. Then Deku arrives and the feels just continue to grow, don't they? He says that he knew that she'd be there and he doesn't want her to hide her pain. Instead, he tells her that right from the very beginning of their friendship that she has always been his hero. She saved him from falling when he smashed that big robot, and then she tried to give him some of her entrance points exams when she found out he had none. She calmed him down when Black Whip first activated and then gave that speech to the public to allow him to come back to UA and rest before the final war began. This scene's just so beautiful, really. He listens to her pain and doesn't try to talk her out of it. He's just there and tells her that he feels the same with how things with Shigaraki ended, but he's going to keep trying and holding out his hand to help others. I tell you what, this scene was also just so romantic. I kind of thought they might kiss here, but perhaps it wasn't the right time in the story. Either way, the closeness, the music, how they were staring into each other's eyes, I was feeling it here, and I think a lot of other people would have felt it too. Then you have the sounds of the class yelling, and you see them all charging up the hill because they were also really worried about Uraraka, and they all embrace, and it's very sweet. I think that's something I really enjoy about the class in this show, that they're openly affectionate and emotionally in tune with each other. They're always crying and embracing and just having wholesome vibes. It's a very beautiful sequence. Hell, even Aizawa was here with them to come and check on her. Lovely to see. Bakugo then asks Deku if he's alright and if his embers are still there, which of course gets the class on Deku's case since obviously they don't know that his quirk's now on a time limit and so they pester him for answers. We then finish off the episode with the reveal that they've put statues of the classes in front of the dorms, with Monoma celebrating rather hard, as he should because he really was an MVP in that first phase of the battle with Shigaraki, and without him, pretty much every hero there except for Deku would have been killed early on. We then see Ayama's farewell party, and little Eri gearing up to sing a song with Jiro, which is where the episode ends. Kinda wish we could have seen that. One more episode to go, I'm pretty sure, and I'm just not ready. I think the show has really stuck the landing in terms of the ending, which I think is an impressive feat. So many shows and franchises go out with a whimper instead of a bang, but not My Hero Academia. Still, I'm pretty sad to see it coming to a close, and I just wish there was more beyond the spin-off show, you know? The preview shows the end of Deku's hero journey, and I'm all melancholy, so I guess we'll end things here. As always, these have been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.